All right, everybody. Welcome back. Spiritual Experience. I hope you guys are having a good holiday. We have a special treat today. We got my boy Patrick, who's in the house. Patrick, say hello.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I'm an alcoholic.
Nice. And you're an addict too, you
Addict.
sicko. You sicko. Yeah, so, Patrick I've known for a long time. You know, he's a young guy. He came in when he was young. And if you looked at him now and you looked at him when he came in, you would think it was somebody else. You know, he came in, he kind of looked like Heathcliff, but with glasses. You know, he was somebody else. He was somebody else, but he was young, and he wanted to change his life. So, you know, the first thing I really wanted to speak with you about is what exactly. Where were you before you got here? Before you came into the rooms? What was going on?
So when I was younger, I was always a shell of myself. I never really had any confidence when I was a kid. I was always kind of the outcast. You know, I was the little kid that read his book in the corner. I didn't want to be bothered. And I always felt like there was something off. I just couldn't pinpoint it. And I knew my home life wasn't always stable, you know. My father worked a lot. He was a computer engineer. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. There was a lot of financial issues, a lot of disruption. My father was a tough Italian guy from Brooklyn, very abusive with his words, you know. He expected a lot from my mom while taking care of me and my brother. And it was a lot for her. You know, she suffered from her own mental issues, and I know today that she did the best that she could.
Right. Now, with even if she didn't have the mental issues, taking care of two kids, it's a lot. It's a full-time gig.
Yeah.
Like, what is the age difference between you and your brother?
So it's about 3 years. So
are you kidding me? What are you guys going to tie each other together? Like this, somebody has to be there. Somebody has to be there. Now, you were also saying, did you feel any of the financial issues you were talking about, or is this just something peripherally you were just like, or were the lights getting cut off? Like, what was the story?
I would experience it more towards my dad would be working overnights and him arguing with my mom a lot about money. Every night it would be like, and, you know, I remember locking myself in my room and putting myself under my covers with the pillow over my head because it used to get so bad. It used to get me in fear. And I think that's where my fear started to manifest.
Right.
And so by the time I got to school, I was always a fearful kid. You know, I would always fear that, oh, this kid doesn't like me, this girl doesn't like me, this teacher doesn't like me. So I had all these presumptions in my head. And really, when my mom and dad didn't have such a great marriage, I kind of think that manifested itself in other areas of my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now looking back now as an adult, I mean, do you think that maybe some of those feelings are like feelings that other normal kids feel, and then just with the environment, maybe it was like exasperated. Like it was like, oh, I was a normal kid that I want people to like me or whatever. But if I have to hide myself under a pillow every night, it almost makes, it sounds like, like a dog. Right? Like a dog, and the owner's calling the dog all the time, and the dog is your friend, and then periodically the owner whacks him with the newspaper.
Right.
After a while, you become like a skittish thing. So
Right.
Were you like skittish on the outside, or just like, was this all like in your mind? Like, how were you behaving?
So yeah, it was all in my mind, and I was a bad kid when I was younger. You know, that's how I used to act out. And, you know, unfortunately, when you're a bad kid, you're going to get reprimanded at home. So my dad really was old school Italian, didn't take any BS, you know, so, you know, I would get the wrath of my father. And I think that's really how my confidence kind of plummeted. And I didn't have a normal high school experience. You know, I remember vividly, you know, my friends would be, you know, dating women in high school and doing normal things. And I would always ask myself, why don't I have the confidence to go up to that girl and talk to her? Why am I overthinking things? So, you know, the uncertainty of my father's kind of eruption when he got home from work, from me being bad, whatever it was, from my mom. He was like a ticking time bomb, so you didn't know what was going to happen. So when my parents got divorced, I was in kindergarten, and it was just like a kind of like a movie setting where is, no, I'm taking the kids, you got to take the kids, I got to work, so
right.
There was that. And I remember vividly, my mom she had a Thunderbird, a Ford Thunderbird, and she packed my golden retriever, all her belongings in this little car. And I went with my mom, and we moved to Levittown, and we lived next door to my other grandmother's house. So we were kind of tight knit, and we lived in like an apartment, and we kind of just survived that way. And I went to Northside Elementary School out in Levittown, and kind of just, I remember having the second grade teacher, and she liked me a lot, and I remember, getting to fights out in the playground, and just being an angry kid from a young age. And then, just going up until about 5th grade, we moved around a lot periodically in that time between. But being in 5th grade, I got bullied a lot. As I progressed, as I got older, I got bullied a lot. And we lived in Port Jefferson, Long Island at the time. And I remember this kid was bullying me so bad. And I was sharing this story the other day. I talked to my father about it, and he never talked to a tough guy, macho, Brooklyn guy from Bensonhurst, right? About if a kid's bullying you in school, because they're going to expect you to, fight them.
Yeah, you better do something.
Right. So one day after school, I remember this kid did something to me. He made fun of my weight because I was very heavy when I was younger. I was a food addict before I was an actual addict.
Right.
How I like to say. And I remember coming out, it was Christmas. It was around this time. We're going on Christmas holiday. And he said something to me, and I remember I just snapped like my father. And I remember putting my hands around this kid's neck, and I blacked out. And I don't know what happened at a very young age, and I almost killed this kid. He was blue in the face. And what happened was they took me to like, kind of like the part of the hospital where it's like an asylum. And they ask you all these questions. Does your mom touch you? Were you abused as a kid? Right. You know what I mean? That type of setting. And they were going to kick me out and send me to an alternative school when I was younger, in 5th grade. But I don't know what happened. I don't remember. My mom kind of reasoned with them. They never kicked me out of the school. And I was only there for a year. Then we moved back to Levittown by the time I got to high school, so 9th grade.
When did the alcohol and drugs start seeping in, giving you that first real relief besides the food?
So
I still get relief from the food.
Me too.
No more drugs and alcohol. But on the wrong day, man, 10 donuts, I'm in. But go ahead.
So about the end of 8th grade going into 9th grade, I started looking at kids they used to call it like the cigarette corner, and they used to smoke cigarettes, and I used to look at them, and I used to idolize these kids, because I was alone, when I was in middle school. I didn't have that many friends, so I would look at these kids, and I would be like, I want to be like them. They were smoking cigarettes, they were smoking pot, and I was like, I want a commonality between these people. I wanted to identify with these people. So going into 9th grade, I remember meeting my first buddy. His name was Sean. And he brought me to my first party, essentially. And I took ecstasy in 9th grade when I was like 13, 14 years old.
Nice.
And I remember saying to myself, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I had no aspirations, no plans. I didn't have any plans to go to college. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to party. I feel good. And by the time I got to 12th grade, everybody was going to see their guidance counselor and looking to go to colleges and stuff. I wasn't seeing any of that. I didn't have any aspirations. I'm going to work at TGI Fridays and I'm going to party. That's the biggest plans I had for myself, because I didn't see myself doing anything great.
in hindsight, doesn't sound too bad, right?
At that age.
Yeah, if you're a teenager, like, I talk about this with plenty of other people, to almost, I'm not saying differentiate ourselves from everybody, because there's some people, they always want to, including addicts and alcoholics and whatever, like, it's a very tall ask to expect a young man who came from maybe an unstable bedrock of soil, right? To be put in a position where, like, hey, do you want to do all this responsible stuff, or do you want to work at Fridays and get drunk and high with your friends and then go chase girls? And like to expect a young human to make the right choice, that's a lot of, you're asking a lot.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is that we don't know how predisposed we are to, like, once I start, I cannot stop. So like there's some people that they can start that life and party of like, oh, well, I worked at this bar until I was like 23 and then I got it together and like whatever. And they don't fall down all the way the rabbit hole because they don't have that genetic thing where, like, they're not an addict.
Yeah.
And none of us put that on the list of things we want. Listen, I'm going to be a drug addict. That's what I'm going to be. Like, no, I don't want to be where I'm at. And this sounds like fun. And so is that what you did? What was the story?
So the story was I didn't love myself, essentially. And I would look in the mirror sometimes and projectile spit.
Even at that time, at that age?
Yeah.
Wow. It's crazy.
I would projectile spit in the mirror and really cuss myself out and say, you're a worthless piece of S. You're never going to be anything in your life. So all those inner demons kind of manifested itself. And I think it was through, the backtrack when my father was alive. And then when he died, he was kind of like the rock of my family.
Right.
And when he died, that's when my family started going, woof, because my mom, as I said, suffered from her own mental issues and she did the best that she could. So seeing your mom at a young age sleep on the couch from depression while you're going to school does a lot to your mental, and your stability.
And you don't even know that that's abnormal because that's just what you know.
Right.
And then when society is asking you to be this other way, you're like, I don't have the skills. Like my mom is sleeping on the couch.
Right. So then you gravitate towards people who have similar situations. Like my friend, his mom, same thing. Bills weren't being paid, lights were out, and to a point towards the end of my using, I remember vividly he had, I guess his plumbing didn't work or something like that. So we would literally go in the bathroom. We were living like animals, going to the bathroom, going, in a plastic bag, tying the plastic bag up with the toilet paper or whatever, and throwing it outside in the trash can.
Right.
And that's how I was living.
Right. But that's obviously that's stuff that's beyond your control. That's like the situation you were put in.
Right.
And then, so you're getting out of high school. What's happening next?
So I got out of high school, still working at Fridays. So I was just merely existing. I had a car. I finally got a car, right? I thought it was...
You had arrived.
Yeah. At that age, at 18, 19, like that's a big deal. You get your first car, right? So I'm cool. I'm listening to rap music, thinking, I'm Nas or Biggie in the front seat.
Rightfully so.
And, just smoking blunts with my friends, doing pills, doing a lot of hallucinogenics and, just merely existing. And I was still working at Fridays in this process. And I remember I had a manager. I guess I was so out of it that I was rolling. I remember you had to roll silverware for the next shift.
Right.
So I was rolling silverware and he comes up to me. He's just like, Patrick, just go home. Just go home. Cause I must have been nodding out rolling the silverware. And, like once that happened, I remember not even 2 weeks later, I wasn't showing up anymore. And they came to my house. This is how much they liked me. They came to my house because I was a good worker, always been a good worker. They came to my house and asked my mother where I was. And I was like, just, make up some BS story. and you know, just living just to live, essentially.
What's going on with your brother while this is going on?
So my brother, I feel bad for my brother. I tarnished that relationship. You know, I was very abusive, very angry. And essentially one day he was cussing out my mom in the home. And I'm not ashamed to say this today. I literally put hands on him. And the kid suffers from, you know, Asperger's. And I used to be ashamed to say it when I first got clean, because I was like, how could you hurt somebody that's so innocent that wouldn't hurt a fly? You know? And so I put hands on him. He got scared, ran. The cops came. Cops came into my room, like busted down the door, like, what are you doing?
Rightfully so.
Yeah. Like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? Are you on, like, they asked me all these questions, and I couldn't pinpoint it. And once that happened, we were living in the house, but we were like strangers. So we didn't talk for like about 3 or 4 years. And then what happened was we couldn't pay for the rent anymore because my using got so bad. You know, he didn't want to keep shelling out money, rightfully so. And it wasn't fair.
Right. So you guys were helping out with the bills and everything?
Yeah, helping out with the bills for my mom. And I remember being 18, 19, and I was just like, I can't even take care of myself. How am I supposed to take care of my mom? And that was put on me at a very young age. So I had to be the man. And he was tired of paying the bills, and rightfully so. My mom wasn't kicking up any money, you know, and what happened was we lost the house that we were living in Long Island. We all went our separate ways. He went to go live in the city. He was homeless for a certain period of time. I was couch surfing. At a friend's house. He just died of an overdose this year. God rest his soul. So I was couch surfing at his house.
Who, your friend?
Yeah, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Long Island I was living with.
R.I.P.
Yeah. I was just living at his house. I remember his parents were going through a divorce. And then, like, looking back, I was like, what was I doing there?
Right.
You know? And they had, like, a bed for me, like a bed for me on the floor. And I was living there. And
it's nice.
Yeah. You know, they took me in. And I still have to make an amends to his mom. Because I couldn't make it out to my friend's funeral. But yeah, they let me stay there. And I was feeding my friend drugs, so he would keep letting me stay there, and I would basically freeload, you know?
Right.
And then I was living in my car for a period of time. If I couldn't, because they were locked, they didn't want anything to do with me anymore, because I was tough to be around. So they would lock me out of their house, you know? And it came to the point where the drugs weren't enough, because I was a problem, you know?
Right.
So they locked me out. I was living in my car. Had 2 black garbage bags in the back of my seat, in the back seat.
Where was your mom?
She was in Selden. She was living at my aunt's house. And nobody wanted me. You know, my uncle didn't want me. He's in the program. He didn't want me to live with my grandmother. You know, he's like, if you come live with us, you got to get sober. And I didn't want to get sober at that point. And so I'm living out of my car.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Right? Because what are you doing? You're showing up. Not only do you have these black bags, you have all of this.
Yeah.
You have your attitudes, your behavior, your addictions, your lying, your aggressiveness. Like, you know, it's not a personal thing.
No.
Even though at that time we take those things personal.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, I go into how dare you?
Yeah.
Like, I remember, you know, I told this story in another episode, like, when my son was born, it was 3 months before my 16th birthday. My mom, like, basically was like, listen, I'm not helping you.
Yeah.
Like, because you are living this way.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to do with the kid.
Yeah.
But, like, dude, I start taking care of your kid now, you're never going to grow up.
Yeah.
Because you're, you know, so it's, but when I look at it, you know, as a human being, like, I wouldn't let an addict actively being the way you were stay with me either.
Right.
You know, so, but at the time I was like, Mom, how dare, this is the time when you're supposed to help me the most, and blah, 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 not knowing that they're actually helping you.
Right.
But in the moment,
Right.
you're like, geez, I'm alone.
Yeah.
So you were alone. So what happened next?
So I got into a car accident. My buddy.
Bad?
Yeah. It was pretty bad. My buddy almost flew out the windshield. So
Oh
I'll go
my
over the
God.
story. I remember I was on a bad bender, and I must have been on a bender for about a week, or 2 weeks. I don't remember, but all I remember is driving my car. We were going down Jerusalem Avenue where I used to live. So I'm driving down the road, right? I'm driving down the road, and it's scary when you're that under the influence. You don't realize that you fall asleep at the wheel.
Sure.
You know, so I was on Xanax. I pass out. Didn't realize I passed out. All of a sudden, I veer off the road and I crash into a parked car. Like
Oh my God.
yeah. So my whole front end is crushed, right? So I wake up like this. I bang my head on the steering wheel. I wake up. So I'm trying to like start the car so it would be a hit and run, not knowing my car was crushed and my friend almost flew out the front windshield.
What kind of car do you have?
A Pontiac G5 GT.
There can't be any more Long Island than that. Jeez.
So I crashed my car. My friend almost flies out the windshield. So as I'm trying to start my car to get away, right, a lady comes out from her house, and she goes, "Are you guys okay?" She goes, "No, everything's gonna be all right. I called the cops." So we're like, "No." We had all drugs on us. We're eating Xanax. We're trying to get rid of it. So the cops come, and I don't even know how. God was looking out for me, my father, too. So the cops come. They shine the flashlight. They do the whole routine, right? They sobriety test me. I don't know why, but they either knew I was under the influence, they had to have, or I'd taken so much Xanax that I didn't have anxiety when I was talking to them because it
was working.
Yeah. So I'm talking to them, and he's asking me all these questions. He's breathalyzing me, asking all these questions, and he's like, "We got to bring you to the hospital because they're like, you know, we got to check to see if you're all right." And they were trying to get me that. So I was just like, "No, I don't want to go to the hospital. I don't have any insurance." Because I knew if they would got me to the hospital, they would put me in handcuffs. I would have been in Nassau County.
Right.
Jail. So what happened was my buddy Phil comes running across the street. And he goes, "Oh my God." He's like, he makes this whole scene. He makes everything up. He's like, "Oh my God, are you all right? You're all right?" He's like, "Officer, he was just trying to say hi to me. He didn't realize he veered off the road." He interviewed him. Then they interviewed me. Our stories matched up, and there was nothing they could do. So what happened was my friend's mother pulls up in the Ford Taurus. She had a silver Ford Taurus with like a hatchback. She pulls up, right? We get in, and I didn't get taken to jail. I don't know what happened. They didn't write anything down. I get to his place, and I get woken up by his family. Like, what the fuck you do? Like, what the fuck? And I'm like, and all these people are yelling in my ear. I don't even know what, I was in the blackout. All these people are yelling in my ear. I'm like, "Shut the F up." And I'm just like, I was like, what happened? What happened? I don't know what happened. His brother wanted to fight me because I almost killed his brother. Yeah, it was just a whole mess. Dysfunction, you know. So after that, I continued to do what I was doing, and I was so far gone that, I started throwing up blood. I started really I started going to the bathroom, number 2, blood. It was all blood. I was throwing up black bile. Wow. It wasn't even throw up, it was bile. So I was killing myself, right? So it came to a point where I was sleeping at my friend Steve's house, the one who recently just passed away.
Right.
And I remember I came over this embedded fear. I owed this drug dealer money. You know, he was gonna like beat me up or something. He wanted money from me. So I had this embedded fear, and I also knew I was gonna go. I don't know, there's a feeling, I don't know, but there's a feeling you feel when you know you're gonna die.
The darkness is coming.
It's coming. And
you can feel
quick.
it.
Yeah.
You can smell it. People don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not like in a Not like, oh, we know and you don't know, but you'll know when you know that darkness is coming. You're like, wait a minute, I want to get off the ride. So what happens next?
So we had the black sheets on the window so the sun couldn't get in,
You're like a critter.
Yeah. Living like a critter. And I look out the window and I remember this overwhelming sense of fear come out, like a fear that I never felt before. And I knew death was coming. That was going to be it wasn't jail. I was getting a slap on the wrist with everything. I knew death was very apparent. And I knew I wanted to live. At that point, that was like the moment of clarity. Like, I don't want to die. I don't want to, I have a lot to live for. I have a family that loves me. I have all these things. I started getting that moment of clarity and I just dropped to my knees. I said, who's ever up there, help me. And something came into my head. Call your uncle. Call your uncle. So
your uncle's the best, by the way.
He is.
He's the best.
He's such a figure in my life. Like he's such a great role model for me, and we, there's different dynamics. He grew up differently than I grew up,
Different humans.
Right. And we're going to have our disagreements, but that's okay. That's what life's all about. Right?
That's what love is all about.
Yeah. I truly love that man. And I
very hard not to like him.
If
you don't like him, there's something wrong with you because he doesn't have that way about him. He's a gentleman.
He is.
I only know him an hour at a time in meetings over a long period of time. But who knows how he is at the dinner table when there's no more mashed potatoes. But no, he's a gentleman and he has a warm spirit. You can feel it, so you knew to call him.
I called him and he's like,
is this your father's brother or your mother's brother?
Yeah, so my father's brother.
Oh, even bigger connection.
Yeah, and he used to go try to find me when I was running around, and he used to I used to duck, like I used to see his Ford. He had a Ford Escape. He worked for Time Warner at the time, and I was like, and like people would be like, "Yo, Juliano, there's your uncle over there," and I'd be like, ducking, and
oh my god, he was like a truant officer.
He would become a macho Brooklyn, like, what the F are you doing?
Right.
That tough love. And I needed that for me. Sometimes that doesn't work with a lot of people, but for me, I needed that militant, tough love.
Because it was familiar to you.
Right.
You got used to barking.
Yeah.
That's a language that you understand.
Yeah.
Even if it gives you a couple of black eyes, it traumatizes you in some ways.
Right.
But that's your language.
Right.
Right. So what happens? You call him, then what's the next thing?
So I call him and he's like, I've been waiting for this call for a long time. And I said, I know. I said, I'm ready. I'm done. And he goes,
how old were you?
I was 19. 18 going on 19, I think.
Jeez.
And he goes, are you sure? He's like, do not waste my time coming from Brooklyn to Long Island to come pick you up. Do not waste my time. I'll never forget. And he's like, let me let you sit on it. I said, Uncle Vin, there's no sit. I'm going to go get high. Right now, because I'm sick. I'm sick as a dog right now. He's like, all right, call me tomorrow. If you have the same feelings as you do right now, then I'll come.
Good for him, because he could have, he almost made you earn it. Which is important.
Earn that trust.
That to just earn you got to ask yourself these questions now. Right? Do I really want it? Because I know in the moment, this is what we're talking about with the donuts. Like in the moment, you want to just not feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So you'll push the panic button.
Yeah.
And he's been around long enough to know, we got to make sure Patrick's not pushing the panic button, that he's really ready to get busy.
Yeah.
So you called him the next day?
Yeah. And I almost get emotional talking about it. Because he was really the only one in my corner. He was really the only one in my corner. And my mother would try with me, and I just wasn't ready. But he really went to bat for me, my uncle. We paid off the drug deal. He picked me up, and my journey started. He drove me over to Grandma's house in Bensonhurst, where I used to go all the time religiously, because my father lived there since he was a kid. My family's from Brooklyn, over 40 years. I have family lineage here. And, I remember going to my grandmother's house. I remember being so like distraught and tired, and you know, I remember pulling up, and I remember going in, and my grandmother was in the kitchen, and she broke down. You know, she would be up. From what my uncle told me, he's like, "See what you did? Your grandma would be up all night begging me to find where the kids are. We had no idea where you kids are." And it was so crazy because my brother, who I didn't talk to for about 4 or 5 years, came the same time, had enough too. He was living on the street. Came the same time when I came. So it was almost like God put this, trying to think of the word, this moment to restore our family again, because there's not many of us left. You know, my father passed away, my grandfather died of lung cancer. You know, I have cousins that live in Minnesota, but in New York, you know, to restore our family, you know, it was almost like that moment. And I'll never forget, like, my brother had no idea I was in the house because, you know, my uncle kept me upstairs, and I remember he didn't trust me. So he would, you know, tell me I could sleep upstairs at night because I had sticky fingers. He's like, you could sleep upstairs at night, but during the day, you got to stay in your grandmother's house. And he would lock the door to his apartment. He had a lot of valuables up there. So I remember, you know, slowly but surely, you know, my brother found out I was in the house, and, you know, it was the first time I saw him in, about 4 years. And it was very emotional, you know, and he looked distraught as well. You know, he was living out on the streets in New York City, you know, and he was living on trains and whatever. And he wasn't able to accept my apology then, and I had to work for his trust.
Good for him.
Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't even look at me. He was just so disgusted with me, and rightfully so. I was a piece of s, you know. And
he didn't know that it could possibly be the end of that Patrick.
Right.
You know,
he didn't think I could change. I had to rewire my brain. So I was so used to being the person I was used to being that he didn't think I could change. He didn't have faith. He didn't have hope anymore. He lost all hope. Mm-hmm. So little by slowly, I started to gain my uncle's trust, right? I did my 30 days. I went back out, had a slip, went to Long Island, was smoking blunts, drinking Colt 45s, old English. And he's like, you know what the right thing to do is? You need to come back here. And I remember staring at, like, we were hanging out at a playground in Long Island. I'm staring at the rocks, and I'm like, this is what my life is going to be if I continue down this path. I have to live differently. I knew there was a better way for me. I knew I had at that moment in my life, looking at the rocks and looking at my friends, I was like, I don't fit here anymore. I have a purpose. I have a purpose today. So came to pick me up, had to restart my day count, did my 90 and 90. My uncle started trusting me again. You know, he started letting me stay in his apartment while he was at work, you know, and that was a big thing for me. I'm like, wow, these people see the change in me before I see it in myself. And that's a beautiful thing. And he started trusting me. It got to a point where I was still insane. I walk in the Free Spirit, and there was a lot of good old timers there, like Tony and all those guys. I haven't seen them in a long time because I've been
Polar Bear, right?
Yeah. I've been on vacation, so I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
And they took me under their wing, and they knew I was insane, and they loved me before I could love myself. And it was very overwhelming. And, you know, a lot of the elder statesmen, I like to call them, a lot of the elder statesmen that came before me just gave me an overwhelming sense of love. I finally found my group. I finally felt accepted. I finally found love. You know, I played high school football. I didn't think I fit in. I played all kinds of sports. I found the group that I looked up to when I was younger, going back, right? I was like, oh, I finally found my people. But no, I found my tribe. Mm-hmm. These are my people. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot over the years.
When you came in, did you have to detox off of that stuff?
Yeah.
Did you go away, or like, what? You just did it on the couch?
No, I suggest anybody to go to a detox because I didn't go because I was hallucinating. I don't know if I was at a meeting one day. I remember one day and I was just like, I was so far gone and I was like, yo, did you used to hang out with my buddy Wolf? And you're like, you're like, and like you gave me that love too. And that's why I love it. I love you to this day. You're like, yes, Patrick, I know you. I love you. And you gave me that hug.
Yeah. I remember you thought I was somebody from Long Island.
Yeah. I was like, did you used to hang out with my buddy Wolf? I think I know you. Remember?
Yeah.
And that's how far gone I was. And I would look into the floor. I would start laughing compulsively, and like I started losing it a little bit. And my uncle was going to put me away into like a kind of like a psych ward.
Of course.
Yeah.
Listen, for those of you who are out there and thinking about getting your life together or maybe getting cleaned up, you don't get any like teardrop tattoo or something if you go from the street into the folding chair. Yeah. Like, we always recommend that you be medically removed from whatever you're on, like alcohol, pills, coke, everything. Yeah. Like, because you can lose your mind. Yeah. I mean, you're literally, you spend years of your life abusing your serotonin, your emotional level, like everything, lack of sleep, all of these things. And then to just have that ripped away from you, or if you decide to put it down, your body is not going to just give you a high five and have a seat and a sandwich. Yeah. No way. Like, you are going to be seeing and hearing things that aren't there. Yeah. There's a whole host of things that can happen. So like, even though that's not in Patrick's story, all of that stuff is on the table. Because if we met somebody now, we saw them for more than a couple of days that they were like, kind of chewing on the coffee cup. Yeah. We say, listen, we'll be here when you're done and we'll take you wherever you have to go. Because the most important thing is like to make sure that, not that you get a nice cushiony landing into recovery, because you could lose your mind. Yeah. Straight up.
I remember calling my buddies and I'm like, yo, do you remember smoking a blunt with Snoop Dogg? Oh, that's how far gone I was. And he's like, yeah, he would be like, what are you talking? And I'm like, yeah, you remember. And I would believe it, so I didn't decipher, like, the dreams that I was dreaming weren't reality, so I didn't have that conception of reality. So, like,
but you were going to meetings.
I was going to meetings. I was going to meetings. My uncle was taking me and came to a point where he's like, no, you got to get your ass to meetings. You got to take public transportation. He did it for the first 90. He's like, you got familiar with Brooklyn. You got to take so I started taking public transportation to the 1 o'clock and meeting a lot of good old timers. But yeah, that first 90 days to 6 months, I was hallucinating. I thought the devil was in the rooms chasing me, and I was basically losing my mind. I remember staring at the TV like a raccoon in headlights and being like, why can't I fall asleep?
Were you going to school or were you working?
No, I wasn't. No, nothing. I couldn't even focus. I couldn't even go to the gym. I couldn't lift.
Yeah. But you were still a chubby.
Yeah. I couldn't focus. Like, my mind was going to committee. Bing, 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 like a pinball machine,
Perfect.
And, I remember one night, my uncle wakes up, right? And I would fall asleep with a butcher knife because I had such fear and anxiety. I don't know what it was. I thought somebody was after me. And I was stacking dressers in front of the door, and I would try to like board up windows. And like I was like, no, they're gonna come through the window, so I gotta make some like barriers so they can't get in. So I'm stacking books or whatever, like crazy stuff, and I'm stacking dressers in front of the balcony door to go out to the balcony. I'm stacking dressers, and my uncle was going along with it so I don't lose my mind. But then it came to the point where he woke up one night, and I woke up and I had a butcher knife in my hand, and I could have stabbed him and then my aunt, who's a nurse, was like, Vinny, you got to put him away. Like, it was coming to that point. And slowly but surely, I started coming out of it, and I started deciphering, like, what is reality and what is fiction, essentially dreaming. And I remember one night, I was going through the work at this time with my first sponsor, and it was the first night I fell asleep. First night out of all like the months I wasn't going to sleep. I was like a night owl. Finally fell asleep. And I remember vividly having this dream where I was at the bottom of this like mountain. It looked like a mountain. And I was in this field, and it was like lightning. It was dark, and it was just like, it was like a thunderstorm was happening, and it was like these noises that were like like menacing noises. And I remember I was in like these chains, and I remember they were like chained to the ground, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, what is going on? So I broke these chains. I went up to this gate. It was like it looked like the old cemetery gates, and it was had old locks on it. So I'm breaking these chains off these locks, and they keep coming. I'm breaking them and breaking them. And I finally get through this gate, and there's like two like stone pillars, and they're like this. And there's a staircase in the middle, and there's just dark abyss. There's nothing. It was like nothing. It was black. So I'm walking up to the staircase, and I feel a force pulling me back. And I'm like, what is going on? So as I'm walking up to the staircase, it's getting stronger. As I approach the staircase, I start going up it. It got way stronger. And then I start crawling up this staircase. And all of a sudden, the staircase breaks when I'm in the middle. And when I'm at the last like couple steps, and I'm at the last two steps, I'm looking down, and I just see black, and I'm just looking down, and I see a hand, and it came out of a bright white light. A hand comes and lifts me up, and it was my higher power. And I started crying in the dream, and I said, I'm sorry. And he said, it's okay, my child. Are you ready to walk into the light? I hugged him, and we walked into the light together, and I'm getting chills. I wake up, right? It's like 5 or 6 in the morning. And this is when I used to smoke cigarettes. I go out on the balcony, and I go to light up a cigarette, and there's a big, beautiful sunlight, right? Big, like huge, like the sun. And I remember, and I'm like, for once in my life, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Just keep living day to day. I'm going to be okay. And I never forget that, because that's where my conception grew for God. And that's when I embraced God. Because when I was first coming to the rooms, G-O-D, stay away from me. Yeah. Like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear. Don't be a big book thumper and bop me on the head with, I couldn't process all that information, so I had to really, be eased into the higher power aspect of the program, and that's when I truly embraced God. And I'm like, wow, I get it. I can have my own conception. It doesn't have to be the figure of a church. It could be anything in nature. You know what I mean? It could be energy. It's just a beautiful way to look at, what a higher power is. And I embraced it,
Now, you've been sober a long time now. How long you been sober?
So I celebrated 10 years in September.
Right. So that's a long time. So do you find yourself in recovery, like having to remember that the higher power has you?
Oh yeah, all the time. I try to take my will back on a daily basis.
Right. So like in the sense of like there's a life really begins when we put the drink and the drugs down. Mm-hmm. So now you're like sober now. And the tough part of getting sober as a young person, I was a little older than you. I was like 24, is that now I have to make a life for myself.
Yeah.
Some of these older guys, they come in, they already have their union job. Yeah. They have everything is set up. So they just got to come in, don't drink. They can cash their check, and they can ride off into the sunset.
Right.
Where like now you're like, what do I do? Who am I? And what do I do with myself?
Right.
And it's very tough.
It is very
Those are tough. It's very tough. So what did you do? You started going to school?
Started going to school. That was later. So I started working at a deli in Bay Ridge, at Seatown Supermarkets, right off of 75th Street. The family loved me. I was a hard worker. I was just working at a deli. That was like my first sober job, and I started earning money, and I started feeling good. I used to take the B4 all the time. I was working at this deli, and as I'm cutting cold cuts one day,
Yeah.
I'm just like, there has to be more to life than just cutting cold cuts.
Because initially, right, it's similar to you. You're happy the noise has stopped. You're happy the madness has stopped. And then, a lot of us will be like, you know what? I just want to live this simple life. I don't want any bombs going off around me.
Right.
I'm good taking the B4 and cutting this cheese.
Yeah.
And then there's a little voice eventually that comes inside of you that says, you can be great. Right? And then you're just like, no, I don't want to because I got to cut this, because you're uncomfortable.
Right.
Right? But then eventually you're going to have to, you can say, no, I can be great. So how do you graduate from the deli to the next guy?
I remember working at the deli and I started getting sick of it. And not that.
Not ungrateful.
Not ungrateful, because
Right.
I'm grateful. Because, I'm earning money.
You would do it now if you had to.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Big difference.
And I'm working at this deli. And I remember my buddy who was working with me at the time. And I would tell him, I'm like, you have a college degree. What are you still working here for? Like, he had a college degree in communications. And he's such a good kid. He's doing great today. I pushed him out of the deli business. He was going to stay there because he was still partying and drinking, and that he graduated college. He was still in that mindset. And I'm like, you got a college degree. I said, you should just apply for one of these radios. And he's like a radio personality now in Jersey. And he's a real estate agent now. So I pushed him out of deli, and that made me feel good. And I'm like, now I started getting a little like, now what is there for me now?
Right.
What is there for me? I help somebody get out of the deli, branch out. He's doing his thing. What's there for me now? So I started really analyzing what I wanted to do with my life. And I went to Kingsborough.
How old were you?
I was 20 at the time.
Yeah, still a young person.
Still a young person, right? And I went to Kingsborough. I don't remember what major I chose. I think it was personal training. It was personal training. I was like, I love fitness. I'm into fitness. I'm going to open my own gym. That's where it started. I remember that's where it started. I'm like, I'm going to open my own gym. I was into CrossFit. So I was like, I'm going to open my own gym. This is it for me. I'm going to become a personal trainer. I won't make the most money, but I'll be happy.
Right.
So as I'm finding out about personal training, I'm like, I'm helping people, but I want to serve people.
But you were also getting yourself in shape.
Right.
Yeah. Like if this was happening now, you could show up and not have to pay that drug dealer.
Yeah, right.
If he saw you now, he'd be like, all right, Patrick, your debt is good.
Right.
Yeah, because you put him in a mayonnaise jar.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and I think of those scenarios in my life, like I kind of have like that. They gave me the motivation because they used to tell me all the time, like, this kid's a dirtbag, like he'll never be anything.
Right.
And that gave me the motivation, like, I'll show you. And I carry that with me today when times get tough. And, so I went for personal training and I wanted to serve others, so I was just like, this kid came up to me in college. He's like, you know what you do good in, the criminal justice field, being a public servant. So I'm like, okay, that's something to think about. I was like, maybe I can go to law school in the future. So I'm like, okay, let me change my major to criminal justice. Got my associates. Then I'm like, okay, what's next? At this time, I'm personal training, at my CrossFit gym. I'm training people. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to apply to different colleges, but I'm going to apply to John Jay. So I got into John Jay. It's one of the most prestigious criminal justice school, if not.
Especially for a junkie. Just saying. Like, just saying.
Yeah. Jay-Z was there, Meek Mill. Like they went to do like a seminar on like police corruption and stuff like that. Like that's how well known that school is. So I went there. I went to John Jay, and it was really the best really times of my sobriety. I met different cultures. I got to interact with different kind of people. I did an internship at the New York State Assembly. I got an internship under my belt. I, did numerous amounts of things in college, finally got my degree, took out a couple of student loans, finally got my degree. And I'm like, what's next? So I think I remember I was working at Olive Garden in Caesars Bay. And I'm like, there has to be more for me. There has to be more for me. And I decided to take a plunge and get outside my comfort zone. And, I'd rather not talk about what I do, but, I did it. I left. I left my home state of New York, and I thought I was going to live here forever. And I got outside my comfort zone. And an old timer once told me, you have to get outside your comfort zone in order to grow. Whether that's going to different meetings, when you're on vacation, meeting new people. So I always carried that with me, and I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm going. So I left New York.
Yeah. So I think, for all of us, we never know where the road is going to take us. Right? You just never know.
No.
And, you start in, like I said, you started in this soil, I call it. And the soil had these kinds of stones in there, and then you come out of that and you went from, in some ways, telling yourself, in reality, telling yourself a lot of this time that you were a zero, right? And then now, a little bit at a time, you're proving to yourself that you're not a zero. You're lit by your actions, by what you're doing.
Right.
So how, and then just even, I remember when you had that internship and you used to have dress clothes on.
Yeah.
It's like this kid going to court, right? But, watching, you can see the dialogue changing that you're having with yourself. And obviously you're not doing it alone. You come to meetings, you got Uncle Vin, and we're all helping each other.
Right.
Right. So that other scared little boy, he's still there. He doesn't, maybe he's not, a big fat kid yelling at you all the time, but he's still there. So how do you remember who you really are when that little guy wants to bang some pots around and tell you you're a loser because you're running into these obstacles? I remember when you came to the meeting after you took the fireman's test. And we were like, you were like, bro, I didn't make it. We're like, we're like, oh, I'm sorry. Well, what'd you get? You're like, I don't know what I got, but I know I failed. I just took the test today. I'm like, dude, that's but that's that little guy banging the pots and pans. Like Patrick, you're a loser. Patrick, you're a loser.
Yeah.
And so the whole recovery game is to because eventually if you listen to that guy long enough, you'll be a drunk without a drink.
Right.
And then you'll be like, okay, I can dehumanize other people.
Right.
And because we forget that other people are human.
Right.
When I say we, I mean you and me, all of us.
For sure.
Oh my God, forget it. Are you kidding me? And then if I don't have people like you in my life, I'll never be grateful for what I have. Because in my mind, I'm a black belt, 12th degree scorekeeper. I'll be like, oh, I did this, and this. And nobody will measure up, right? Because that's the little guy. So what kind of advice can you give other people when they have that little guy banging on the thing, their own little guy, to keep going forward? Because you could have quit at any time. 10 years, you could have quit in the third year. In the fifth year, you could have quit 7 times this year and you didn't, right? Because you don't know. Because if you would have told yourself when you're cut meat in the deli that you'd be here 6 foot, whatever, 200, whatever, trying to be great and trying to outdo yourself, that guy wouldn't have believed him. So what advice can you give somebody else who's having that conversation with themselves that they don't even know how great they can be?
I would say look at life more as a marathon. Because there have been times in point of my sobriety where I've failed, I think, more times than I can count on 5 fingers. Like I just want to tell you, I'm not unique by any means, but I don't have a silver spoon that was in my mouth. I don't have any connections like some people do in the rooms. You know, like I hear, oh, people get into, you know what I mean? They go do this and all their life, they're making lots of money. I don't have that story. I have failure on top of failure, on top of failure, on top of failure. But what I can say is when you reflect back on those failures can be the greatest teacher, and it breeds confidence. It kind of, you know, as one of my mentors in my life, Goggins, right? He says, the more you put yourself in uncomfortable positions, the more you callous your mind. So essentially those failures, even though they suck in the moment, and that little guy, I told you so you wouldn't do it, I told you wouldn't make it, that voice starts to subside a little bit, and you start to really just feel the emotions of being like, wow, like I feel empty. You know, this past year, I went through really traumatic events in my life, and I committed, I wanted to do something, right? And nothing is owed to me. And that's what somebody told me that in the very beginning. Nothing is owed to me, right? And I really haven't been on top of my recovery like I used to be. And I'm so grateful that you have me on this podcast because it's a reminder, right? That's why I do these things. So I had a really tumultuous year and a traumatic year. I really wanted to become something, right? I set my sights on this. Like, I don't have any options. I'm going no options, no plan B. And you hear so much on social media of guys saying, yeah, you got to not have any options. You got to just go for it. Go chase your dreams. And what they don't portray on social media is the failure on top of failure on top of failure. Because a lot of successful people fail. And
every successful person, every single one,
you know, and including yourself, you're a successful 100%. Guy. 100%. Fail. And I just saw this movie, American Underdog, with Kurt Warner. He was working at a supermarket, arena bowl.
You never know.
You never know. He made it into the NFL. He won his Super Bowl with the Rams. The first year he was in the NFL.
I remember that.
And I just watched his movie, failure. And where I'm going with this is those failures really promoted growth in my life. Getting outside of my comfort zone promoted growth in my life. So that committee in my head, like, you're no good, you're never going to be anything. My whole perspective that I have of this year really changed, you know? And I rarely hear those voices. So anybody who's struggling with that, you're no good, get outside your comfort zone and fail until you get it.
Failure is not death.
Right.
Like, failure is just pain. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, like, you learn to love the pain. I love the pain. Like, I laugh at myself now when things don't go good. Yeah. I remember when I remember when I used to work on Wall Street, and like we'd buy some stock or whatever for clients, and the market would start crashing because it was like we were at war. It was like blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. So every time bombs were going off in the Middle East, the market would crash, but 10%, whatever it was. So it would get so bad, we would start laughing. Yeah. We'd say, listen, there's nothing we can do. You know? So when you understand that failure is an absolute prerequisite for success, it's part of the formula. Yeah. It is legit part of the formula. And, you know, to embrace that and say, okay, well, I'm going to leverage this experience from this failure, or from, you know, a failure really for people like us just means that, like, we don't get what we want. Right. That's just failure. Right. We don't get what we want. We want to control everything. Mm-hmm. Right. So we don't get exactly what we want. And not understanding that, like, we don't know how many days it's going to take or how many sleepless nights it's going to take before you get that day out in the balcony.
Right.
You don't know the number.
No.
But you have to not pick up every day until that day comes.
Right.
Because it's guaranteed that day is going to come. It's going to come for you. So like, but the key is to keep showing up and not get the immediate result. You could have picked up any time within those few months.
Oh, yeah.
Be like, dude, I can't sleep. You know what? I'm going to have to drink a bottle of ZzzQuil, which has alcohol in it for those who don't think it does. So like if you drink a bottle of that shit, starting day count. But yeah, you could have, and you didn't.
Yeah.
So it's like none of us know what it's going to take. And they always say it just takes what it takes. If there was an exact number, everybody would be on the moon.
Yeah.
So I think what we learn, and it's so great, you learned it at such a young age. Yeah. Like I'm listening to you talk about this criminal justice stuff, and also like none of that is off the table. Mm-hmm. None of it. Yeah. Everything is on the table. Yeah. Everything. Like if you could not drink and drug and go from living in a car to cutting meat in a deli to like having a degree to like, because there's no limit.
Right.
There's no limit. It's just, okay, well, how much shit am I willing to eat?
Right.
And the shit is just like, okay, I did everything I could. This ain't going my way, but I know that the big guy upstairs, he has me. And when I don't think he has me, it's okay. The rest of my family has me, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I think that's something we all need to remember.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible thing. So, we just made an hour. We're going to close it out. Do you want to say anything in closing?
Yeah. I mean, for anybody who's struggling, you just know that there are answers. I remember coming into rooms and having no hope. There is hope for you. I just want you to know that. And if this addict can get clean and sober, you can too. And I remember being in detox, just to close out, at Nassau County Medical Center. A woman came in. I'm on the methadone trick and everything. So I'm looking at this woman and she goes, listen, I was sitting in one of these chairs about 2 years ago. She says, if I can get sober, you can too. So I just want to relay that message, and I appreciate you having me on the podcast. Peace and love.
All right, guys. Have a great day, night, or whenever you're listening to this. Please rate, like, share, whatever. The podcast is doing fantastic things, and we're absolutely grateful. Love you all. Peace.